Hi everyone. Today I'm sharing a spread in my Life Crafted album that I made as a tribute to the unmarked graves of children that have been discovered in Canada within the last month. So while I don't usually like to talk about politics in my YouTube channel, today is Canada Day, and in light of recent events, I just thought it was important to raise awareness for some of the issues we're facing. So instead of my usual process video where my voiceover is me talking about what I'm doing in my process for making these spreads, I'm going to be instead sharing my thoughts on the Indian residential school system in Canada and also sharing some resources that I've found to be helpful in understanding these issues. I will be talking about some issues that might be disturbing to some viewers, so if you'd prefer not to hear me talk about these issues, feel free to mute the audio on this video, and you can still watch how this spread came together, or you can feel free to skip this video if you like. I'll just start off by sharing a bit of background on why I chose to make this spread. So on May 28th, the remains of 215 children were found buried in unmarked graves at a former BC residential school. And since then, more unmarked graves have been found at other former residential schools, with the latest news on June 24th that 751 more graves were found in Saskatchewan and suspected to be mostly children. So I was just really shocked when I heard this news. In school, we had learned about Indigenous peoples and how the settlers had taken their land and introduced them to substances like tobacco and alcohol and brought diseases that wiped out entire Indigenous communities. But I don't recall learning too much about the Indian residential school system and what a horrible system it was. So around the 1900s, the Canadian government started taking Indigenous children away from their families and their communities and putting them into these residential schools facilitated by Christian churches, where the goal was to kill the Indian in the child. And these schools ran until as recently as 1996, so quite recently. So throughout the century, generations of Indigenous children were being subject to emotional, physical, sexual abuse, and cultural genocide, which results in intergenerational trauma among Indigenous populations today. And as a healthcare professional, I see some of these effects in the Indigenous patients who I care for, and it's just really upsetting to me to see the links between how the Indigenous peoples have been mistreated and how that has resulted in lower health outcomes for this population. For example, Indigenous patients may be more hesitant to seek healthcare due to maybe a mistrust of government-run agencies like hospitals, and they may be more likely to leave against medical advice as soon as they're able to, even if they haven't been fully treated yet. They might also have a higher prevalence of alcohol abuse, leading to higher incidences of alcoholic liver disease, mental health issues leading to higher rates of suicide. And these can all be related directly to generations of having their cultural identities being taken away from them and the unhealthy environments of these residential schools. So I started looking for resources to help me understand how I can better serve this population as a healthcare professional and also as a Canadian citizen who, just by being here in Canada, has benefited from colonialism, and also how I can help advocate for the Indigenous peoples. So I'll leave some of the links to the resources I found in the description box below. As a healthcare professional, I found Alberta Health Services has some courses on Indigenous populations and caring for Indigenous populations specifically, so I found those to be helpful, and if you do have a chance to do those, I would recommend those if you are in healthcare. The University of Alberta has a free online course called Indigenous Canada, And it looks very comprehensive in talking about Indigenous histories and contemporary issues in Canada from an Indigenous perspective. So I haven't taken any of the lessons in this course, but I plan on doing so in the near future. If you look up On Canada Project on Instagram or just on their website, they have some quick and straightforward slides on what steps we can take as settlers to help advocate for Indigenous peoples. So I'll leave a link to them in the description box below as well. If you feel like sharing your support financially, Maclean's magazine has a collection of 6 organizations that you could make donations to. So they list here the Indian Residential Schools Survivor Society. That specifically is BC based. There's the Legacy of Hope Foundation, the Orange Shirt Society, the True North Aid, First Nations Child and Family Caring Society, as well as Reconciliation Canada. So I'll just put a link in the description box below to that Maclean's magazine link so that you can check those out for yourself if you're interested. And I'll also leave a link to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission reports. There are some very lengthy documents on that page, but I found it to be helpful at least to read through the Calls to Action document from 2015, which is only 20 pages long and quite a short read. And it just provides some recommendations that were made to our government. Not all of these recommendations have been implemented yet, so I would encourage you to maybe think about these recommendations when you're considering some candidates for our next elections. And even if you don't live in Canada, but you live in a country that has been colonized, like the US or Australia, I would encourage you to look into how the Indigenous peoples in your countries have been treated historically or even to this day, and if there are any similar issues in your countries as well. Whether you decide to celebrate Canada Day today or whether you decide that that's cancelled for you, I hope that you'll take a bit of time to think about the issues that we have in Canada and how to move forward from that. If you have any questions about the Indian residential school system, feel free to leave them in the comments down below, and I will try to answer them as best I can. If you have any questions about my process video, I do have all of the links to the products that I've used in the description box as well as I usually do. So feel free to check that out as well. Thanks so much for listening.